Welcome to the Cheat Code Corner podcast, season 2, sales edition, where we hit you with the cheat codes to help you advance in the areas that you care about. In this season, we will be interviewing master sellers and negotiators and key account directors. These are all people that have brought on tens of millions of dollars across their careers. These people know how to pitch. They're very persuasive. They're very charming. They're authentic. And the idea is we're going to be able to better understand what it takes to become a successful salesperson, how to do positioning, but more importantly, how to build these strong and deep client relationships. So a lot of the information that they share, you'll be able to incorporate into your own day-to-day world, and hopefully that'll be able to help you win. All right, well, hopefully you enjoy the season.
Because if you work hard, if you care about your clients, if you are passionate about the products, the number's going to come.
What do you feel are some like the key qualities in a successful salesperson?
So I think the first thing is you need to be really curious. Ask a lot of questions, find out as much as you can about, the client, their key challenges, their objectives, and really get under the surface of what the clients are looking for, because the market changes, your product changes. There are so many different areas that just keep you on your toes. But the reason I decided to go on this podcast is because, one, I really like the story behind it, like why you're doing this, and the reason you put this program together is to inspire young professionals and people of color. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's a really good idea that more people should try to adopt. So I really bought into that.
Welcome to the Cheat Code Corner podcast, where we hit you with the cheat codes to help you advance in the areas that you care about. I'm your host, DC, and today we have a guest. This lady is a killer. When it comes to new business sales or client development, she is unmatched. She hit goals something crazy like 4 or 5 years straight. She was one of the highest performers at Madison Logic routinely, one of the best in EMEA. She built out that team. She dealt with some of the largest organizations on planet Earth and routinely was able to land and expand within them. And I've relied on her for a lot of information, a lot of support. I mean, she is just hands down, not just one of like my favorite people in the world, but she is an absolute wonderful person. And she is so good at sales and client management. I mean, like, she makes me nervous sometimes. I got to step my game up. Welcome, please, to the program, Leanne Mai.
I'm trying to push myself to do things that I'm uncomfortable with.
Okay.
So that's kind of going to be my new thing, because if I'm scared, it might mean something good is going to come on the other side.
100%. I love that.
Yeah. So that's kind of my new thing. I mean, I've always shared this Will Smith video. I don't know if you've seen it.
Of course I did. Yes.
How good is it? It's so good.
It's so good. I was just thinking that when you said that, I was like, oh, Leanne, Will Smith talked about this on the other side of fear. Yes.
So I love that video. I think it's super inspirational, and it really encourages you to be uncomfortable and know that that uncomfortableness is literally just the hardest part. And then after that, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's, I'm telling you, I was sweating because I was like, please, we need Leanne on the program for so many reasons that we talked about before. I mean, not just like your professionalism and your background, but like how your nature is. I also just think that what you bring to the table in terms of how you're going to be able to articulate your journey, as well as just being in sales and client management, it's amazing. And we need, like, I also want to highlight how, there's a lot of the women that I have came across, and there hasn't been many in new business sales. There has not been many. They're all usually pretty solid or great. They're almost, you know what I mean? And it's obviously it's a kind of a unique thing, but like, it's just whenever I come across a killer, regardless of a man or a woman, I do respect them. I do want to learn from them. And so I was just really, really excited. Like when you decided to hop on, I was like, thank the good Lord.
No pressure, right, Damien?
Don't worry. So one of the things I would love to understand is just talk to me a little bit about your background, because all I know is you're from down under. That's it.
Yeah. Yes. So I am from Australia, originally from Sydney, and my background is Chinese Vietnamese.
Chinese Vietnamese. Okay. What's the break? Is it who's mom? What's mom? What's dad?
So it's actually really weird, because it actually just means that my parents are second generation Vietnamese, but their background is Chinese. but we always just called it Chinese Vietnamese. I'm not really sure why.
Okay. Okay. I mean, do you speak, is it Chinese or Vietnamese or?
I speak Cantonese, which is a dialect of Chinese.
All right. Okay. All right. Very cool. And can you explain to me how come there's like a lot of Asian folks in Australia? I mean, I guess logistically it kind of makes sense, but was there like some type of migration or just any particular reason why there's so much Asian folks in Australia?
I would say it's largely due to the war. The Vietnam War. A lot of people flocked to different countries, US being one, France, as well as Australia. So I think that sort of has a sort of large contingent. And then if you think about, I guess, the location, if you're looking at immigration expanding, then Australia is definitely the best place for that.
Okay. Very cool. And it's interesting because Vietnam is on the list. I went to Thailand one time and a bunch of my friends were like, oh, you need to go to Vietnam. It's dope. It's great. And like, so it's on the list. It's just like, it's so far.
I haven't been.
Have you not been?
No, I know it's awful. I've always wanted to go. It's on my list, but because I moved to London, traveling around Europe, because obviously great base for that. I just haven't been to Vietnam. I've been to almost every other Asian country, but Vietnam on the list. Want to go for the food, but unfortunately not yet.
You get that. So what's the deal then? How did you get to the UK and from Australia?
So I went over on my youth visa, which basically means under 31, you can apply for 2 years. You don't need a company to sponsor you at all, and you could just work. So I decided to do that. Because why not, right?
Yeah, why not? That's very cool. We had one actually. I moved to London after college, and they used to have one between the States and the United Kingdom where you can go for 6 months or something like that. But I think they deactivated it after a bunch, like for some reason.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very cool. Okay. Now, this is another thing that I'm always very curious about. So within my experience, I mean, I've been in sales for longer than I care to say, and it doesn't take much to notice that there are not many ladies in new business sales or people of color in general. And so I've always been very curious to know how does somebody get into new business sales? And so I'd love to know, like, how did you get started and how did you get into sales?
So I started off in agency actually, and I never thought I'd get into sales at all. One of my sales reps actually came to me and said, hey, what do you think of sales? I think you'd be good at it. And I was like, no way, this is not going to happen. Like, I'm not a salesperson. I can't do it. And he just kind of explained to me, he said, okay, look, Leanne, what do you do during your day job at agency? I was like, I pull out responses, I combine them, I pitch them to the client. Like, that's sales. And I was like, okay, that's true. And he kind of lured me over with, the promise of shorter hours and more pay.
Right. Boom. But
obviously, being in sales, there are days that you need to work a lot later to hit those numbers and, do the grinds. But ultimately, that was how I moved over.
So he told you all the good stuff. Oh yeah, more pay. Your skill set. It's already that. He didn't tell you about holding that number or the stress, the long nights. He didn't tell you about any of that stuff.
No, he didn't. But you live, you learn.
Yeah. No. I get that one. I get that.
Well, and to be honest, there's like long hours and in other roles.
Yep.
But the difference is, you work hard in sales, you're likely to get paid for it.
Absolutely. No, 100%. I love, it's interesting when people ask me about why do I like sales, because then they're like, oh, the pressure and things. I'm like, yeah, but there's pressure in other jobs. But it's one of the few roles where, your compensation or the output is directly related to how much time and effort you put into it.
Exactly.
Now, granted, sometimes you could do a lot of work and you still don't get that contract.
That's true.
Right?
No, that's true.
But I think on a whole, if you're grinding, if you're working 10 hours a day for a while and, plug in the soil and work in the fields, you are going to get a good bushel of crops in the next season. So I do believe that.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So when you decided to switch over to sales, and you kind of mentioned, hey, your skill set was kind of similar. Were you surprised by anything? Like once you got into sales, like, did you realize that it was exactly that? Or was there anything that was kind of funny?
I honestly don't think I thought about it much in terms of that sales role. But when I was starting in sales, I thought there was only one type of salesperson. And I think it's probably come from TV, that
Of
person
course.
who's trying to sell you something that you don't need.
Yep.
But actually, especially in advertising sales, it's not like that at all. And, I was really lucky to work in a really great, diverse team. I had loads of different types of salespeople who sat within it. And I was able to learn and grow with a lot of them and take on different styles that ultimately helped lead me to the salesperson I am today.
I Leanne, you're so insightful. I love that actually, because I oftentimes when I talk about sales and I'm talking to like my cousins or people, they do have that same idea about, it's like, always be selling, pushing. And I always tell people, I'm like, look, no one's buying anything that they don't want to buy. Like, like it's not like that, especially at this level. Right. Mm-hmm. But I do like what you talked about, which is there are actually a lot of different styles to it. Like a lot of people have different superpowers. Some people are great at prospecting, land and expand. So what would you say is kind of your superpower? Because I have an idea of what your superpower is on the outside, but I want to know what you think your superpower is. And then I'll tell you what I think it is.
I think my superpower is land and expand.
Yeah.
I love to really go deep and try to find out more and really lean into the conversations had with the clients to help build that relationship and ideally build successful campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, you are. Okay, yeah, that is your superpower.
Wait, but what did you really think?
So that is your superpower. So I'll tell you, the first time that I heard about you, right? I remember I was at ML, and someone mentioned, I was like, does anyone know anyone in EMEA? Because I was trying to I had a client over here and I wanted to go over there, and people were just like, talk to Leanne, she's great. Like that's not, this is like, talk to Leanne, she's great. She's really good. And then I remember seeing your name in our Slack celebration all the time, and but I don't think we had spoken then. And then one time, and I got so nervous. One time, and my decks, the presentations I put together are pretty solid, right? Yeah. If I don't say so myself, right? They're pretty solid. And one time, I don't know who someone shared with me a deck you put together.
Yeah.
And I wanted to throw my deck in the garbage. I wanted to delete it. I was like, Damien, you need to step up your game. I got an MBA. I've been working for a long time. Like my decks is supposed to be decent. And when I saw yours, I was like, yo, is this what's happening? Okay, I need to step up my game. So I thought from a tactical level, I thought not just presentations, but I thought the way you provide analysis and how you present data and information was really impressive. And then you combine that with relationship building. And then, I guess that's why you hit your goal all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, I remember that too. I was just like, geez, like this, like I think I reworked that deck for like 2 hours after. I was like, yo, mine is terrible. Oh man.
You could have just lifted the deck. I mean, sales is about, streamlining your workflow.
It is, but listen, Leanne, you know that people put those decks in PDFs. So am I going to go to you and be like, please, can you make it PowerPoint for me?
I would share.
You would share, but I'm not. Listen, I had just started. I was pretty good. Came from Rollworks. I was doing well. I wasn't about to humble myself, but I saw that deck and I said, geez, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like there's an ego play there.
Oh, we're salespeople. Of course it's an ego. If you don't think you're good, you're going to be destroyed. You're going to be destroyed. And you know that. And speaking of which, with the ego and kind of like, I guess in sales, a lot of people oftentimes look at it and it is to some degree dominated by men in the sense of new business. I think client management to some degree is a little bit more diverse. I am curious to know, what is it like being in an industry that is dominated for the most part by mostly men? What is that kind of like?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting one. So I'm going to throw a question back to you. When you have a sales conference and you go in and you have group of males, group of females, who do you gravitate to? Like business meeting, sales conference, don't know anyone, where would you go?
So, and this is the truth. Like when I first kind of got into sales and things like that, I would kind of gravitate towards the guys. I could talk sports or it was just the easiest thing to make a connection to, right? Yeah. Now in my older age, like it's a little bit more flexible. And so now, I'm actually interested when I do go to conferences to hear ladies' stories because there's not that many of them, especially within new business or client relationships. So my experience now has evolved over time. But to be fair, I would have usually gravitated towards guys, and that's the truth.
Yeah. And it's great that you're an ally now to, I think, females at work. That's great. But I think for me, being a little bit of an introvert as well, I always kind of gravitate to someone that I'm familiar with. So similar to what you did before with gravitating towards males, I tended to gravitate towards the females. Mm-hmm. So in an environment where there are a lot more males in the room, I always felt just a little bit awkward. Now, not to say every woman experiences the same thing, because a load of women are really comfortable in that environment. But for me in particular, I did find it a little bit challenging, especially from a networking perspective.
Yeah. And you said, so you said that you're an introvert? Did I catch that correctly? Leanne, how are you an introvert? How are you an introvert?
I am an introvert. So I think I'm a self-taught extrovert. So I need to recharge internally. I need to spend time with myself, and that's how I recharge. But working in sales, you need to have a little bit of that persona where you're a little bit more out there, you have those conversations. And I think definitely at work, I have more of the extrovert tendencies, but... Correct.
That's why I'm like, wait a second. I mean, I've known Leanne for an introvert, but so by nature, you're an introvert.
Yes.
Like you feel you don't come off as an introvert. I'm not saying you come off as being like bombacious and all and bombastic and stuff, but I didn't know naturally that you're an introvert. Oh, that's how unusual. Right.
Definitely. I was probably really quiet in my sort of high school years, and I evolved each kind of stage of my life. I opened up a little bit more, and then I got into sales, and I think I just got into the rhythm of having those conversations with meeting people. But the initial sort of stage of being in an unfamiliar environment, that introvert personality still is there, and I need to psych myself up to have those conversations.
So then how have you evolved then over time? I mean, listen, in a new business sales conference or a client, 10% females, maybe 15%, maybe. I mean, at least in the States, I don't know if in the UK, maybe it's a little bit different. It's certainly changed over the last 10 plus years, but so then, are there some coping mechanisms, or how have you, is it just a matter of you gravitated towards other ladies and then just over time you kind of took in and you developed the skills there, or to socialize? I'm just kind of curious.
For me, it's building up my confidence in what I know around the business. And that builds the confidence I need to have conversations with both males and females.
Oh, okay. I love that.
I would say that the power that I would use would be knowledge there.
Yeah. Okay. That actually, I really like what you said there too, because so I'm reading this book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, and it talks about, perseverance, grit, and developing different skill sets and things like that. And one of the things that they talked about was that, personalities can change over time as long as you have a growth mindset. Like a lot of people think you have to be an introvert or an extrovert and that's actually not the case. Like through experience, working hard, trying, pushing yourself, you can evolve over time. And I think obviously you're a great example of that. I just did not know that you're an introvert by nature. I didn't. You've been holding out. You've been holding out on us, huh?
I need to see some cards close to my chest, I think.
Right, that's fair. I'm not the same, but I'm an extrovert by nature, but what a lot of people don't know is Damien needs Sunday through Wednesday. I need it to recharge. I need it. I need it to relax. I need it. And I can't just be out there all the time.
Yeah.
I can't just be on all the time. Okay. So another question then piggybacking off of that is, what would you say to maybe some young ladies or girls that are, they've heard about sales, or maybe they're a little bit apprehensive to get into it because they hear it's too crazy or what have you? What are some of the things that maybe you would share with them?
I would say have a think about why they're apprehensive about getting into sales. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of stigma around getting into sales, like, the whole car salesman mentality or, lying to get things done and really negative connotations when it comes to sales. But that's not what sales is at all. You've been in sales for a really long time now, and salespeople are just regular people. So it's kind of like bearing that in mind and, taking any sort of that generalization out of the picture when making that decision. Mm-hmm. The second thing would be a lot of people are really daunted by the idea of that number sitting on top. And I would say to that, there's a number in every role that you have, even though you're not like paid on it or you're not necessarily having it as a hard target. There is a revenue goal in almost every organization that you're going to sit within. Yep. So don't let that be a deterrent, because if you work hard, if you care about your clients, if you are passionate about the products, that number's going to come.
The number's going to come. Yeah. Do you ever wonder, I mean, and again, since we've been at sales for a while, we've have our ability to kind of test and figure out what works. So we kind of know what works. But don't you think, though, to some degree, what's daunting or really tough, whether you're a female or a male, just entering the space, is that there's no exact playbook for it, right? Yeah. Like, you know that there's prospecting, you need to know a product, you need to know the competition, but just because you know the product and the competition doesn't mean you're going to be good, right? Doesn't mean that you're going to know how to negotiate a good deal, or doesn't mean that you're going to know how to hit target consistently like you have. So do you think that maybe sometimes too, it's also just, there's no like exact way to do it, but if you want to be an engineer, you got to take the courses, boom, then you know how to do it, or a mathematician, or somebody who just knows how to write or something, like, like there's kind of like a coursework to it. There's not really that in sales.
No, there isn't. But I think the good thing about sales is there are also loads of different types of clients. So if you have a good sales manager, they will sync you up with the clients that matches your personality and how you like to work.
Yes.
And I think that's something to sort of bear in mind. There aren't the same salespeople, there aren't the same clients. So whilst you have to be adaptable working in sales, it's around knowing what some of your skill set is, leaning on some maybe wider teams on areas where you think you may fall short, and working with your manager to build up your skills. Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious too, then, when you've, in some of the deals that you've had, when you've lost a deal, right? A big one. And I'm talking big one. Yeah. Like when you've lost an annual, when you've lost like a 250 annual or something like that, just because, you got beat out for whatever reason. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Just even when you were saying that, like my heart just kind of
feel it.
I can feel it.
You feel it. I know.
I can definitely feel it. It's the worst feeling in the world. You lose that deal, you get that email, you get that call. Typically, I will spend just a little moment by myself. Like I kind of let that feeling kind of sink in, just because I need to let myself deal with the fact that I've lost this big deal.
Yeah.
So I sit, I breathe, I might go for a walk, have a conversation maybe with a colleague, just to sort of let them know, just to put it out in the universe. But typically what I do would be to send an email to my client, to thank them for the opportunity, and then ask for some feedback, because I think it's still an opportunity to learn, to grow, and understand how you could do better next time. So those would probably be the steps that I would take.
Yeah.
It's been a really long time. I would say I used to be quite hard on myself. But over the years and working with my different managers, I've learned to be a little bit more compassionate when it comes to losing a deal. And I think that's really important.
You got to give yourself some grace. You got to give yourself some grace.
And you can't win them all.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've gotten better at them, but it's hard to take it. It's hard not to take it personal. Yes. Especially if you're in a competitive space where like the solution sets are kind of similar. You know what I mean? So it's like, you're just, at that point, it's just like, come on, like what happened here? But, okay. So what do you do? What do you do when you win a big deal? I mean, like, what's your celebration ritual?
Honestly, it's very similar in the sense that I will take that moment for myself, but instead of that sunken feeling, I have that feeling of elation. But I think the key difference is, if I won a big deal and I'm thinking that I'm going to get some big check at the end of the month or end of the quarter, I definitely would go into one of my favorite shopping sites and buy myself something pretty.
Yes. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. What is pretty? What is pretty for Leanne? What's your go-to?
My go-to. Sometimes it's like just a nice like handbag or shoes or piece of clothing. Like fashion is something that I'm really quite interested in. So something there that.
So you buy it. You buy it after you get confirmation. You don't buy it after the check comes in.
No, I have a look at what is available and what I could buy, and I will only buy it after the check comes in.
Oh, right. Okay. We're similar in that way. Like I'm not buying until that check comes in because we don't know. We don't know.
You don't know what's going to happen.
You don't know what's going to happen.
For sure. But if it's a big one and I'm feeling really excited, then that might be something that I'll have a look into.
Yeah, you got to treat yourself, especially in the self-care in our industry is very huge, very huge.
Definitely.
All right, cool. So you've had a lot of success at most of the stops that you've been at, especially the last one. And I was curious to know, what do you feel are some like the key qualities in a successful salesperson? And when I say successful, not just somebody that can have a good quarter, but somebody that can consistently hit target and is resilient.
So I think the first thing is you need to be really curious. Ask a lot of questions, find out as much as you can about, the client, their key challenges, their objectives, and really get under the surface of what the clients are looking for, and just keep organized of that information, keep that in a place where you can refer to and leverage that to continue the conversations that you have with your clients. I think that curiosity needs to also stem into your own products that you're selling. Push the product team, push your cross-functional teams to better understand how maybe you can execute or solve for the objectives that your clients have. So it's more around asking questions and really building your knowledge base over time to continue to do better.
Yeah. Let me ask you then a question about, there's two things. So you talked the first thing about there's curiosity, getting information about understanding your clients. So so just from a tactical level, you're saying take extensive notes and then be able to reference those, whether it's through emails, whether it's through reaching out, just consistently having that. Is that what I'm hearing then?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's just from conversations with your client as well. You can do your own research. You can look at what's happening in Salesforce, historic activity within your client, talk to your colleagues and other people who may have worked on the client before. But there's also lots of research that's available online. So you can have a look at, if it's a big client, maybe some of their annual reports to see what some of their key priorities are.
Yes.
So a lot of different areas that you can tap into to understand what are some of your clients' challenges that you could potentially solve for. Yeah. And then when you're talking to the clients, you can validate them and dig in for a little bit more and see whether or not that's something that they're looking to solve as part of their marketing challenges.
You know what I love about looking at annual reports or 10Ks, not only it spells out what the priorities are of the C-suite. Absolutely. I mean, it says it. They literally write it like, oh yeah, like this year, this is what we're focusing on, right? So I think that's interesting. But what's interesting too is that you can demonstrate dedication, curiosity, or even demonstrate your professionalism through that types of research. So when you bring that to the table with a client and you mention what you've read or what you've heard, right? Yeah. They're going to say, oh, like this person, hey, Leanne, oh man, like she's going the extra mile. And so you don't have to say about how great Madison Logic is or LinkedIn or whatever company. You're demonstrating that through your own behavior, which I think is kind of like an interesting way of communicating through action versus just kind of telling your client something.
Exactly. Absolutely.
The other thing you said was pushing internally, kind of pushing like your product team, talking with people internally. What did you exactly mean by that?
So I think, your products are usually something that's developed internally based on what the needs are and what they hear back from sales. But what the client needs does evolve over time. Yep. So it's almost just providing that sanity check and touching base with them to ensure that it's still aligned with what you're hearing out in market. And if you're hearing some consistent themes, it might be something where you work with different teams internally to build a case so that product can execute on some of those features or benefits that clients are after.
Yeah. I didn't actually ever really think of that. Cause like we're in the market, we're talking with clients constantly, right? You know what I mean? Different business units, different stakeholders. And like, you definitely start to hear themes, right? But I've never really actually thought of like collating those themes and really pushing the product team. Cause oftentimes the product team will bring stuff to the table. And then I'm like, nah, that doesn't make sense. But that's in a reactive way versus me being proactive with it. And I think, that's actually kind of I never thought of that. I like that. Very cool. So let's see. The last thing that I'd love to understand too is what keeps you in sales and client management?
What keeps me in sales is, I would say it's the relationships that I build over time. Mm. I'm a really curious person by nature, so I ask a lot of questions. And then as I ask questions and learn about my clients, I get more and more intertwined into that world. One of the most difficult things about leaving a business is leaving the clients behind and having to rebuild those relationships because you're not necessarily going to get the same clients. So that was one of the things I was like, when I left my last business, I had such great relationships with the clients that I had there. And it was really sad to have built up this relationship, this plan, and then having to hand that over to somebody else.
Yeah. Those relationships you really get intertwined with them. I mean, you do become an extension of their team and you depend on each other, right? Like, I mean, I depend on my clients. Like it is, right? Yeah.
And the other thing that keeps me in sales as well is it is constantly changing because the market changes, your product changes. There are so many different areas that just keep you on your toes. And when you're moving clients, you can still, even though it's sad to see them go, you can adapt some of the learnings that you had on those clients to your future business.
Yeah.
So each time I think you're evolving your skill set, you're broadening the way you deal with a specific client or need. And that's always something that's really interesting because, working in sales, as you know, your portfolio is essentially your business.
It is. Yep. It's the business.
Act as if it's your own business. So the more you learn, the more you grow, the more diverse and challenging it can be. So it's a really interesting role because it's constantly evolving.
Yeah. And what I like too is it's like you mentioned about your clients are evolving, like the needs of the business, the products. But you know what else is also evolving is that your skills have to stay sharp. Right? Like which it holds it account. It's not just presenting like, your Excel game has to be good. Your presentation games, your deck games, which is yours are amazing. Or even too, and we talked a little bit about it earlier about prospecting, which maybe you don't have to prospect for new clients, but you still have to prospect into new divisions. So I like that as a sales, like no salesperson I know is like, has one skill. Like they have to have 4 great ones. If they don't have 4 great, no chance are they doing well. It's impossible. And so I do like that it holds me accountable in that sense that like, look, you have to just have 4 different types of main skills that have to like keep you afloat, which I really enjoy.
Completely agree.
Cool. So in the next section, which is the last section of the podcast, it's called Power Questions. Power Questions, Leanne, is it's designed to give us a little bit of insight into who you are beyond what you shared today. So it's kind of personal. Now, here's the thing.
Okay.
It is rapid fire. Okay. So,
I'm ready.
You ready? All right. So numero uno, how many hours of sleep do you get?
6 to 7.
6 to 7. Okay, that's pretty solid. All right.
Yeah, not bad.
What is your diet like?
It's pretty healthy, but I do have splurges sometimes.
Yeah, well, like what? What's a splurge?
I love like set menus or fried chicken.
Okay, all right.
Fried chicken is kind of like something I do maybe sometimes once a week, but I'm trying to stop that.
Ain't nothing wrong with some fried chicken. What's wrong with fried chicken, baby? Fried chicken is good. All right, how about this? Favorite activity to unwind?
I would say probably Netflix.
Netflix? Okay.
Netflix or making dumplings.
Netflix or making dumplings? Like those are, I'm not going to say they're completely opposite, but one is active and one is passive.
Exactly. So it depends what you want. So I think Netflix is really great to sort of switch off. And if you want to immerse yourself into a different world, but dumplings, it's quite methodical. You kind of make the mix, you make the dough, and then it's that folding of the dumpling, which is quite fun. Okay. So I find that just a good way to escape.
Okay, I like that one. What has been your inspiration, would you say, your biggest inspiration?
So biggest inspiration would be the people around me. So I am very fortunate to have a lot of friends who have done really well. So I look around, see what they've achieved, and that really motivates me to really do better.
Yeah. It's the village. It's the people around us. It's the influences around us. I love that. And then final question is, what are you reading or listening to?
So I'm mainly audiobook person. So currently I'm listening to The Brain at Work by David Rock. And then from a podcast perspective, I'm listening to My Therapist Ghosted Me.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Leanne, for joining. This has been so amazing. If somebody wanted to reach out and connect with you, ask you some questions, or just learn a little bit more about your world, how could they reach you? So
they can reach me on LinkedIn. I have an open profile. So I think it's Miss L May as that /. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll do my best to respond.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leanne. This has been fantastic. I will need you to join in a few years. I want you to come back and tell me about all your adventures and how things are going. I would love to hear from you. Absolutely. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. So what's good, fam? Hopefully you enjoyed Leanne Mai's episode. I'm going to tell you, this is probably the hardest recap that I'm going to do. And I'll tell you why. It's because the reality is that everything Leanne says is correct. Everything that she says you can over-index on and end up doing well in your own role as a salesperson or account director. So it's really difficult to pick 2 or 3 things that she says that you should really focus on, because everything she says is correct. With that said, that's why I like doing recaps, because it is a challenge. As it relates to Leanne's, if I had to say that there were 3 to add some additional weight to, it would be these 3. So number 1, the importance of being curious. A genuine curiosity should really drive a lot of what you're doing. If you're not in sales or account director, you don't have genuine curiosity to help the client, you might be in the wrong field. Curiosity will drive your interest, will drive your research behaviors, will enable you to ask a lot of questions, which I think is really critical, because the more questions you ask and the more interest and curiosity you show, the more that you can learn about the client. And also it's just, that's how you can build trust with the client, because you're showing a genuine interest in helping them solve a need or whatnot. The second thing she mentioned is the importance of being thorough. So what do we mean by thorough? Which I love that word, thorough. When we're talking about preparing for a meeting, whether it's a discovery call, whether it's putting together a proposal, being thorough is doing your full research. It means reading articles about the client, the most recent posts that they've done. It means reading CRM data and seeing if they've ran with your company in the past, if any competitors have ran with you guys. Being thorough means going on G2 or Owler and doing competitive intel. That means more than just reading about LinkedIn and the most recent posts they do. It's about understanding, hey, what group is the prospect in? What other teams do they work in? What's the solution set of the client? Reading the 10Ks or the annual reports to understand the competitive landscape or how the organization or your client is performing. All of this really thorough and deep attention to detail will help you stand out to the client, because the nature of the questions that you'll have will be more comprehensive. It'll demonstrate that you care. It'll demonstrate your curiosity. And so I think the importance of thoroughness will exude through a lot of the behaviors that you have. So your proposals will be better. Your pitches will be better. Basically, the idea of being thorough is being comprehensive in your approach when you're doing research or when you're dealing with the client. The last thing that I love Leanne talked about was the importance of collaboration between taking the information that the client shares, whether it's about the solution set, whether it's about, challenges that they're experiencing or problems that they'd like to solve that they can't today, and share that information with your product team or your engineering team to up-level or to level up to improve your own solution set. That will make you very, very valuable, because you'll be listening to the client, you'll be sharing things, helping your own organization. And so, that just kind of helps you to become even like a better, a bridge between the client and the organization. Hopefully you like these 3 tips. Leanne is amazing and all the information she shares is very valuable, but I'm hoping that these kind of 3 top ones resonate with you guys. All right, till next time, take care.